par, par courriel un document avec toutes les diapositives en français, oh, excusez-moi, présentées aujourd'hui, traduites en français. S'il vous plaît, n'hésitez pas d'engager dans la langue officielle de votre choix. Et sachez que nous avons l'intention d'avoir une URL fonctionnelle en français avant la fin de la phase pilote. We have a very interesting hour ahead of us and have built in time to answer questions at the end. For your questions, we'll ask those attending online to use the Q&A function that you should see in the black bar at the bottom of your screen. For those who've joined us in person, please hold your questions to the end. Bien sûr, n'hésitez pas de poser les questions dans la langue officielle de votre choix. Note that we will follow up with all participants with answers if we don't have time to get to everyone's question. Finally, as we will really benefit from your input, we would appreciate your full attention as we make our way through our presentations. I'm almost done. Sans plus attendre, je cède la parole à notre directeur exécutif, Angus O'Leary, pour formuler des remarques introductives. Angus, the floor is yours.
There you go.
If I get electrocuted.
That's right. You're good, you're good. This is in the spirit of reuse.
The good news for everyone is I will be very brief. Thank you, Julia. And then I just wanted to say a thank you to everyone for coming today. So my name is Angus O'Leary. I'm the Executive Director for the Social and Environmental Procurement Policy Directorate here at PSPC. So your presence here today means a tremendous amount to us. This project means a tremendous amount to us. We've been working with our dear colleagues at CIC and at Écologiques and with the great team that I have here to really try to move what is a very important project forward on our radar here today. So this is going to be a very useful tool as we go forward for procurement officers here at PSPC, for the private sector, and for other government departments. So the objective here is to really try to make this tool accessible, useful, and give us something that we can really all use together as we go forward. So I'm supposed to tell you as well, I like the earlier version of this as well. So my pronouns are he and him. I have light skin and I'm wearing a light colored shirt and glasses, but the previous version that they gave me said that I had short hair. And I'm wondering why that part was removed. And I kind of appreciated it. So, encore une fois, merci de votre présence ici aujourd'hui. Je vous souhaite une séance d'information très productive. So we'll get forward to hearing from you all today, and I will turn it back to the people who really know what's going on. I don't think it's going to you now. So
Thank you.
are we switching chairs? Or do you want to? Okay. Oh, I need to take my chair. Okay.
Oh, no. Okay. Oh, la, 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 la. Okay. You got my paper. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Hello. Bonjour tout le monde. Hi, everybody. Merci beaucoup pour votre patience. Mon nom est Stéphanie Bull. Je suis la gestionnaire de l'équipe technique ici à SPAC pour l'approvisionnement vert. My pronouns are she and her. And for those people who are visually impaired, I think I am wearing a red jacket and I have gray hair. But because we're not using our big functionality, you can tell who is talking. It's very clear. I'm talking to you right now. So it is an honor to be with you today. We can change slides. And to be joined by such an excellent collaborators, Joanne Singodar here in the room, and Paul at Écologiques. Nos objectifs aujourd'hui sont simples. Our objectives today are simple. First, we're seeking to raise broad-based awareness of the Green Public Procurement Tool for Federal Assets project, what it's doing, what it's trying to accomplish during its pilot phase. Second, is to demonstrate via an overview of the database itself, what its capabilities are, and how we're planning to engage with you moving forward with our colleagues. Et troisièmement, c'est l'occasion de poser des questions et des commentaires de votre part et de vous inviter à fournir des commentaires plus détaillés au cours de cette initiative. We know from your RSVPs that we expect at today's event over 225 people, including suppliers, representatives from industry, and colleagues from other government departments. We hope that as you learn more about the initiative today, you will choose to join us in what we consider to be a groundbreaking initiative. And I'll explain a little bit more about why we think it's a groundbreaking initiative in a moment. Okay, next slide, please. Today's agenda, l'ordre du jour. We're a little bit behind, so I'm going to go quickly. So I'm going to start providing you some context about PSPC, sort of our role and what this project was funded to do. And then Joanne will give us an overview of the stakeholder engagement by category, which is going to be starting soon. And then Paul is going to give an overview of the database itself, sort of how it functions. And then Julian is going to keep us on track, our MC, who you heard from, and then I'll come back and open up the Q&A portion. So apologies to the people in the room. Vraiment désolé, we can't see the slides on the screen, but hopefully we can still follow in real time. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so PSPC overview, l'approvisionnement à SPAC. So many of you know this, but PSPC's vision is to excel in government operations, and our mission is to deliver high-quality central programs and services that ensure sound stewardship on behalf of Canadians and meet the program needs of federal institutions. SPAC remplit plusieurs fonctions, donc deux des importantes sont celles d'agent central d'approvisionnement et de gestionnaire des services immobiliers du gouvernement du Canada. So there's additional deals I'm going to skip over in the interest of time, but so my team's role is to support the 1,200 or so contracting authorities across the country in applying the policy on green procurement and in growing our clean technology spend. Next slide, please. So the policy on green procurement, la politique d'achat écologique. So in budget 2022, PSPC was directed to create tools and guidelines to accelerate green procurement across the federal family. And this is already in line with our existing responsibilities under the policy on green procurement. So some of you may be familiar with one of the new requirements under the policy on green procurement for all contracts over $25 million to include greenhouse gas disclosure requirements. So this is a new requirement. There are other requirements in the policy on green procurement. For example, PSPC is required to provide environmentally preferable options to clients, and clients are required under their additional responsibilities to purchase the environmentally preferable option when value for money is demonstrated. Thank you. Next slide. So the way that we define green procurement, which is important, and I'm going to read it because it's important. Environmentally preferable goods and services are those that have a lesser or reduced impact on the environment over the life cycle of the good or service when compared with competing goods or services serving the same purpose. Les considérations environnementales comprennent, entre autres, la réduction des émissions de gaz à effet de serre et de contaminants atmosphériques, une meilleure efficacité énergétique et hydrique, réduire les déchets et soutenir la réutilisation et le recyclage, l'utilisation des ressources renouvelables, réduction des déchets dangereux, réduction des substances toxiques et dangereuses, et la biodiversité. So this is considered a multi-impact definition, which includes multiple environmental impacts over the life cycle. So how precise we are in terms of the life cycle and what life cycle stages we include is evolving, but it is part of the definition and it is an important part. And you'll also note that this is a relative definition. So it's comparatively less impacts than competing goods or services. The clean technology definition used by Statistics Canada is also a relative definition. So environmental claims can be made regarding good or service attributes, which will address one or more impacts. And it should be noted that Canada's Competition Bureau requires that all environmental claims not be false or misleading, and they must be based on adequate and proper testing. So in our procurement, we take greenwashing very seriously, and we are looking to ensure very robust claims with this project. Next slide, please. So the objectives of this initiative, so our real property colleagues who are here today, thank you for joining us, and ourselves applied to the Greening Government Fund for money to customize and configure a database of goods, existing database of goods. And it's called, the initiative is called the Green Public Procurement Tool for Federal Assets, or the Green Products Database. So its primary objective is to help contracting authorities and clients easily identify environmentally preferable and clean technology products. Its secondary objectives are to enable PSPC to meet its responsibilities under the policy, as we discussed, to align green procurement requirements with the US, I'm going to keep going quickly, and other public procurers to better signal market demand, et accroître l'approvisionnement en technologies propres et de soutenir les petites et moyennes entreprises canadiennes. Merci. Thank you, Julian. Okay, so these secondary objectives were important to us as we customized this project. So next slide, please. So this is really what it is. It's a customized and configured Canadianized, quote unquote, version of a certified environmentally preferable products database, which is used by the United States General Services Administration, which is PSPC's equivalent, and other large institutional buyers in the United States. Mostly in procurement and real property applications, exclusively in those applications. So we consider it to be groundbreaking ou révolutionnaire pour plusieurs raisons, but je vais souligner trois. So for procurement, we see this as groundbreaking because it gets us out of the bind of wanting to include environmental considerations, but not knowing what the market can provide. So this is always a challenge that we have in procurement, and this really gets us out of that challenge by putting everyone on the same page. We know also for environmental sustainability, we consider this to be groundbreaking because procurement, we know, has the power to drive firms and suppliers to take substantive action. So we learned recently from our Environment and Climate Change Canada colleagues that the majority of firms surveyed as to why they're joining the Net Zero Challenge, it's because of procurement. So we know that procurement is an important driver. And we also see it as groundbreaking for Canadian firms because when your product or technology appears on this website, it will also become visible to everyone who uses it in the United States as well. So, and these are large markets. So we know the GSA, for example, spends about $650 billion a year. So we see that as a very significant feature of this initiative. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to skip over this because Joanne's going to get into it, but this is about our consultation process. Next slide, please. And this is our schedule, our category schedule. So Joanne will address this as well. Next slide, please. So just finally, before I transition to Joe, so how we intend to use it in Canada. So pendant la période pilote, où il n'y a pas beaucoup de produits canadiens dans la base de données et où les certifications n'ont pas été évaluées, nous utilisons la plateforme comme outil de recherche. So internally in the Government of Canada, we're going to use it as a research tool to share information between clients and buyers about the environmental attributes that may be available on the Canadian market, including those from Canadian SMEs. And externally, this is publicly available to anyone. The database is a public source of third-party verified environmental information that is up to date. It's updated monthly and available for use across supply chains and product categories. So as more products are added and as the certifications are vetted, there is the potential that we will use this more forcefully in procurement as a requirement or as an incentive. So that's my spiel. I've skipped over a bit, but I'll see. Over to you, Joe. Yeah, you're doing your chair. Okay.
Okay. No. Next slide. Thanks, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Joanne St-Goddard. I'm the Executive Director of the Circular Innovation Council. Happy to join you. Thank you very much to everybody for taking the time, and particularly the busy vendors and suppliers. And first and foremost, thank you to our friends and partners at PSPC and the other government departments for giving us the opportunity to support this important project. So for those of you who have not heard of us. We were formerly the Recycling Council of Ontario, and played that role as an independent organization for about 40 years, and we've rebranded into the Circular Innovation Council and become a national organization. We sort of fall in three pillars of action. We are completely independent and a non-for-profit organization, as I've mentioned. We do work in sort of three areas. Policy and advocacy and public procurement and procurement generally are very important aspects of the Canadian economy, and certainly a really important lever, we believe, to transition from Canada from a linear to a circular economy. From our programs, research, and pilots, we also develop a lot of resources and services that are open source. Our independent nature allows us to do that. We are unique in the sense that we have a membership base that really spans the value in the supply chain. And really what that means is we've got producers and sellers, manufacturers, researchers, academia, and we've also got the other side, material managers, material scientists, processors, consumers, and civil society all make up our very diverse membership. And that really allows us to really understand the opportunities that lie in the marketplace for us to accelerate the transition to circularity. And really start to create programs and resources like the GPP tool that you're going to be immersed in here in the next 45 minutes or so, as important to accelerating that transition. These are really important hands-on resources that are absolutely needed. Next slide, please. So we started our work in procurement, particularly as one of our key pillars of action about 5 years ago, realizing the collective power, purchasing power of governments, about 15% of Canada's GDP, all in one, if you roll up the purchasing power of the federal government, provincial and municipal governments alike. And for the most part, they pretty much buy the same things, maybe just in different quantities and different scale. But when you combine that purchasing partner, they are a very important market shaper. And so tools like the GPP database are important to try to coalesce action and accelerate that action in a marketplace. We started with a few specific circular procurement summits back in the early 2000s. We also work internationally with other leading organizations like the UN Commission and United Nations Environment Agency, who have also identified public procurement as a key accelerator in the market as well. So we do a lot of scanning the globe for best practices. We do a lot of collaboration between stakeholders, both in the public and the private sector. And in fact, that is our role here in this exciting project. Next slide. So we have been brought on to the project to bring our breadth and scope of national and international experience, but also because we do have that rich and diverse membership from which to then draw our experience. And as a collaborator by nature, our organization is well positioned to be able to bridge conversations like this that are needed between the private sector, who certainly wants to do business with government, and then government who wants to do the right business back with them. So this is really the gluing role that we will play as an organization. So we have to ground ourselves in the methodology that will really be the backbone to this project moving forward. And so we really have 5 big, bold deliverables that we're responsible for. We're going to take on a full review and summarizing of the US GSA that Stephanie had mentioned in her talk, and other existing environmental labels and product certifications currently available in the Ecomedes platform. You're going to see a live demo, which will give you a really firsthand view of what that platform is capable of doing. And you will already see that it is filled with some of the information. And we wanted to start there as a baseline. Then we're going to take on additional research that really starts to look at the Canadian landscape. So looking for Canadian product-focused environmental labels and certifications to add on to what's already existing, or maybe different from and more relevant to the Canadian marketplace. Then we dig into the stakeholder engagement. We've done a few of these in previous to today's session in certain product categories, and we're going to be doing a lot more from October right through to January. And we'll be really breaking those consultations down into specific product categories so we can dig into each of the products themselves and those categories to find what may be unique in those instances. So we're the conduit of information out from the government regarding this project. And we're also the conduit to bring information and coalesce it back into government so that they're building a tool that is relevant to today and is going to be useful to their objectives into the future. And we'll be also targeting, so we'll be doing that through these kinds of consultations. We'll also be doing that through surveys, which we will be doing in the consultations, but also through online tools that will be open and available to you at any point in time throughout the project's life. And then targeted engagements as well, looking at industry associations that are relevant here and whether there are domestic manufacturers or dealers that we can speak to that actually have the experiences or may have opinions about the certifications that exist. And then we'll be taking all of that stakeholder feedback and making some recommendations back to our friends at the government, proposing which environmental labels and other data sources they should be reflecting on and utilizing as they start to finalize this Canadianized platform. They will have final choice in terms of what those product category filters will be eventually, and then they'll get imported into the tool that will be live for public consumption. Next slide. So what are the areas of objectives that really are guiding us as we look for what are relevant certifications and product labels? There's really 4 categories: procedural, economic, environmental, and social. I won't go through all of the bullet point here, but it gives you an idea of what are the characteristics that we'll be looking for in terms of what makes a relevant or a useful market certification tool or mark. Things like were Canadian stakeholders actually involved in its development? How many companies or products actually have achieved the certification that are on the market today? What's the market penetration or use of that particular mark? And then what's the market readiness to adopt them if in fact they aren't? And what are the barriers and opportunities to do that vis-a-vis cost, time, market opportunity, et cetera? What are the environmental attributes, which of course are paramount here given the policies of government, looking for low carbon, low waste goods, looking for circular business models, circular based design products. So what are these key environmental criteria that really are must-haves and that inform those certifications? And then of course the overlap into and the connectivity to the social objectives of government as well. Diversity and inclusion by way of an example, labor practices, availability and economic equality issues around production and the sale of those particular products. And it may not be just in a product level, but it could actually be measured at an organizational level as well. So the scope will include both. Next slide. Don't tell me the slides aren't even working now. Oh, there we go. So sorry, went too fast. So on the stakeholder consultations, our objectives are pretty overt here, pretty common. We're striving to engage with a diverse set of stakeholders to capture a wide variety of insights and perspectives. This is an open door policy. We want as much information and feedback from you, good, bad, and otherwise, as we can possibly get during the life of this pilot project. And so we're looking for stakeholders who, of course, are active suppliers who are already registered. Many of you here in the room or on our Zoom call today are already registered to sell into government, but we're going much further and much beyond that as well to try to penetrate into the Canadian marketplace as much as possible. And then we'll be leveraging our contacts as well and those that we've gleaned along our procurement work and elsewhere. 4 big key objectives: to gather insight on eco and third-party certifications for each of the product categories that we'll be assigning or assessing, solicit feedback on the benefits and obstacles of such eco labels and certifications, identify additional certification standards and eco labels that should be considered Canadian or otherwise that potentially do not show up in the GPP tool now, but should be. And then beyond that, solicit your recommendations and considerations for the tool and how government can pursue their procurement objectives. Last slide, I think. Second to last slide. So I won't read them all out, but there are 9 categories that we will be, sorry, 12 categories that we'll be looking at here. And we've already started to tackle some. Right now, we're doing a lot of the desktop research. There are some very specific and like lighting, lots of types of lighting. So it's a pretty specific category and everything to, and also including building construction, which you can imagine is very diverse. So these are the common span of categories of the public sector. And that's really what has been used to sort of categorize them and to give us sort of chewable chunks as we start to dig in. Next slide. So here is the schedule for consultation. This will be made live on a URL that we will give you at the end of the consultation today. And again, these are specific dates that we'll be hosting virtual consultations, and you'll get invites to them as we learn who you are and what product category or area you're most interested in, and there'll be a registration process for you to join them. But we are really an open book, and that really is the point of these consultations. So we encourage you to note these dates and to be in touch with us early and often so that we can get you involved. Next slide. More dates, cleaning products, lighting, HVAC, plumbing, and potentially others that could be identified that will be kicked into the new year. And there's that registration URL that I spoke of, circularinnovation.ca at the bottom of the page. Sorry for folks in the room. Trust me, it's there. We will make sure that you get this PowerPoint after, but you'll get to know this URL link, and we encourage you to register. So thanks so much. Am I going next?
It's over to Paul now.
Oh, great. So
Yeah.
I can just sit and relax now and go
Yes.
off screen maybe.
Yeah.
There we go.
Good afternoon. Hi, my name is Paul Shariari. I'm the founder and chief innovation officer here at Ecomedes. We are a software company powering this tool for the Canadian government, as we did for the GSA as well. Our mission is pretty straightforward. We want to simplify the product research and accelerate sustainable procurement. And the way that we do that is with 3 main functions. We want to automate the search for that sustainability data. Some of us call it the sustainable scavenger hunt. We're always looking for data to showcase that we are making better decisions. So we gather that data directly from those certifications and eco-labels. We then will automate the compliance logic. If there's procurement requirements or there's some type of documentation requirement, we'll not only analyze the product for the right data, but then we'll also streamline the documentation reporting that will showcase the great progress we're making towards the goals that we heard of from Stephanie and from Joanne. Next slide, please. So today we're going to cover a very brief overview of the technology, how it works, how that product platform was designed, what it was designed to support, how the data flows into our system, and then we'll go through a couple of very basic elements of the platform tour. Next slide, please. So what we do as a company is we collect and curate data. So we have over 80 different sources of third-party eco-label certification standards and other eco-data registries. We pull them from across a wide range of topics, whether it's circularity, Energy Star, DLC, Cradle to Cradle, EPDs, HPDs. There's a wide variety of eco-labels that we already have in our system. And what we're going to do is we're going to gather that data. We're going to refresh it on a monthly basis. We currently have over 10,000 brands in the platform, over 1.2 million products, about 100 different eco-label certifications and standards, and the sources are about 60 different unique sources. So we also add data from unique brand and factory product related attributes. Not all these are certificates. They could be something like a declaration of a product not having PFAS or location of manufacture or multiple locations of manufacture. So what we're going to be doing is gathering of the data directly from the eco-labels, but then also allowing any brand that wants to enrich that data. Many of the eco-labels don't give us pictures and descriptions, so we'll give you the opportunity to provide us more information, a picture, description, hyperlink back to the product page to really make sure that your brand and the product data shines and makes it easy for the procurement officers to make their decisions. Next slide, please. We curate that data, we put into that grid of which product categories are recovering. And what's beautiful is from that system, from the back end, we can actually take a look at how does the data that we've got in the system, how does it align with various sustainability frameworks or green project and procurement frameworks. We currently have data organized by ROI, by energy, by water, by human health, by planet health, by circularity. We also have the ability to automatically evaluate the data within the system against rating systems for buildings, such as the U.S. Green Building Council, WELL Standard, Living Building Challenge, Green Globes, SF Tool, which is our federal government guidelines. And also we just added mindful materials, which is another guideline for material choices that go into products into buildings. So we digitally vet all that information. And on the next slide, what it'll showcase is that we bring that data together on a product. So in a lot of cases, very green, sustainable, high performance products, they haven't just achieved one eco-label or one standard. In many cases, in this case, for this one chair, they've achieved 9 different certifications and standards and have 20 other additional data points that are made available to the buyer to make a better decision. So I sometimes joke it's environmental procurement is a lot like dating profiles online. There's a lot of data that you might want to align with, and we make it easy for that data alignment to happen without any need for the buyer to have to do all that research by hand. And then we can put it through whatever type of a grid or analysis that you guys care about. So we're going to be working with you guys and working with the teams to identify what materiality, what transparency, what circularity, health, carbon related data can be automatically evaluated preemptively, so that the search for that product data is a lot easier because we've gathered the data that's important. We've also made it easy for you to document or analyze that product on the fly without having to train large amounts of facility managers and procurement officers on all the intricacies of some of this green procurement information. We're going to kind of automate a lot of that. A lot of folks would call that kind of a rudimentary version of an AI. It's going to artificially grab the data and analyze it for you and allow you to use that data to make decisions a lot faster, but always using that data as the driver, not like Stephanie mentioned, maybe using greenwashing or advertising claims. These are all based on the facts of either the manufacturer provided to us, or in a lot of cases, the eco-label gave us that registry data directly. Next slide, please. So the platform has been organized by those rules. So we're going to take that large amount of data that we're pulling in on a monthly basis, and we're going to create a customized version just aligned for your institutional buying requirements. No different than we did for the US government. They gave us all of their procurement guidelines. We modified our system, and only products that have made it through that data requirement will be able to be visible on your platform. Yours is going to be used for research, so there'll be lots of various data that's available to you. It's not going to be as constrictive as the US federal version because we haven't had that level of constriction and those compliance logic filters created yet. Next slide, please. To register, it's very easy. You just go to the main site on the very upper right-hand corner. You just do a sign up. All we need is an email address and a password you create. It doesn't need to be tied to anything else. It's very simple. Just that way we can capture your work and let you have access to your projects as you build more and more evaluations within the system. It's open to anyone. It's free. It's just going to allow you to do your work a lot faster when you're out researching products and availability. Next slide, please. So the search is driven by data, search by impact. You see on the left-hand side of the screen, it's very small, but there's all the certifications and eco-labels will be there. And those certifications and registries are there in their entirety. So whatever you see on a certification website like Energy Star, that same data will be available to you in your tool. So you're not going to have to go and worry about that data. It's all basically merged together into one database without having to go to all those different sources with different separate web hyperlinks. It's all kind of consolidated there, organized by product category and whatever type of compliance logic we'll be building into the system. Next slide, please. That data in this example, if you were to click on the furniture filter, you'd get 40,765 products that are compliant with those eco-labels. And then if you look at the certification eco-labels, we then have a further search by any of the actual certification requirements that are in the system. So BIFMA level, cradle to cradle, declare, and in those parentheses is the number of products that have achieved that type of certification. So constantly as you're using this tool, sometimes folks think of a database as just a place where you go grab data and take it out. Every time you use any of the filtration in the system, you're constantly getting a reevaluation. So it's almost as if a green procurement consultant was riding along with you, making sure that as you made choices and selections, you're going to know how many products meet that secondary, tertiary filter in the space. Next slide, please. If we're to go into furniture seating, task seating, that's kind of a going down the product category refinement. You'll see that we start at 40,000, seating is 936, task is 187. So there's 187 out of the 40,000 pieces of furniture that are task seating. And then BIFMA level is one of the rating systems you guys currently use to evaluate whether or not a vendor is green or not. Then you can basically go and further refine it based on level 1, level 2, level 3 being the highest certification in that eco label. And then if you were to go to the brand filter on the left-hand side, you'll see a listing of all the brands that have achieved that level designation at the 3 level, which is the highest. And then you'll see how many products they have within that category. So that breaks down which brands have created products in those 187 results. And it allows you to very quickly get to whatever brand you're looking at or validate claims that are coming through from the vendor or from the brand. So we wanted to make sure you guys understood we're taking about 2-3 days, sometimes a week worth of research. All that's available to you in that powerful left-hand navigation, and you can sort through product details to whatever level of detail you're looking for. Next slide. Also, when we gather that data on your behalf and on behalf of our users, we're going to provide you hyperlinks to that actual certification data where available and any other enrichment that the manufacturer has provided. So certificates, certifications, scorecards, materiality reports, EPDs, LCAs, embodied carbon data, backlinks to their recycling programs or their take-back programs or their corporate social responsibility reports. All of that data. So in this case, that chair again, we have now 11 different hyperlinks that are available to you at the click of a button. So all of that research that normally would be done on other databases, we've not only grabbed that information, but we've made it one click away in case you need to take a look at that information in a deeper way. Next slide, please. Because we have a structured database, all the data within our system is easily comparable. So you can go in and grab products in the research results. You can add to a project, which we'll cover in a second, but we can also just create a comparison with one click. So as you find products you're interested in within your product category, you can select them very easily into a comparison window, much like you would on any other e-commerce shopping site. And what it's going to do is it's going to align all that data down rows and columns so you can see very clearly what has achieved what certification. Not all products will achieve everything, but all of these products instantaneously were put into a combined grid, basically what I used to do by hand in Excel in my early part of my career. And it's going to give you 60 different unique attributes across these 4 products that you can then further take a look at. Wherever those hyperlinks exist on the product page that I just covered, those will exist in that evaluation comparison log. So a very deep, rich tool to be able to make sure you're making the right decision based on the right data. And you'll clearly see which product manufacturers have been the most transparent and provided the most disclosures to you. Next slide. The last thing that I'll show you is a little bit of product analysis. So in cases of Energy Star or WaterSense, if you want to do energy analysis or water analysis, you can actually evaluate products to whatever guidelines you have. So here's a monitor we're evaluating against federal guidelines, the example in the federal US government. And with one click, all the product detail on that page will be analyzed by that engine, that compliance engine, and instantly provide you documentation that says this product meets whatever those guidance requirements are. That's why this outreach is going to be important. Please join those calls so we can hear from you. What documentation do you guys currently have, and how can we better inform ourselves when we're making some of these logic tables out there for you? But it's all one click. We have all the North American green building rating systems, the US federal guidelines, and then other green building rating systems like LEED, WELL, Mindful Materials, and Living Building Challenge. As the Canadian procurement rules get established and codified, we'll be bringing those in there and putting those into the system so you can clearly see what meets what. Next slide, please. And the last thing is, in that same example, that monitor has achieved Energy Star. We can actually take the data from the Energy Star model of energy consumption. You can then fill in how many products of this monitor are you going to be buying for your agency or your region, and it'll actually take the Energy Star data of consumption, compare it to a baseline monitor, and then provide you a very quick, what we call watts and water, dollars and cents ROI calculator. So it'll be a simple ROI chart of how much are you saving, how many hours do those monitors run. Therefore, it'll show you exactly when that monitor will break even in terms of its initial cost investment, and then show you how many kilowatts it will not need off the grid, and then convert those to dollars that agency won't have to spend to operate those monitors if they've chosen a high performance monitor. Next slide, please. So the last part of this is I'll show you is all the data that we have in our system can then be consolidated into a project or a procurement. So anything on the platform that you find, you can just add to a project. It's basically just a container for all that data. You don't have to worry about downloading all those PDFs and all those hyperlinks. You basically grab the products that you like, hit add to product, add to project, just like you did at the comparison. It'll put into a little grid. You can then select quantity, unit price if you know it. If you just want to check it for compliance, that's fine too. You can run the same calculations. But once you build that out, you can save that project or that procurement, and all the associated data along with all those products will be mapped into a project summary, which you then can PDF and generate for yourself and share with your colleagues to showcase this is what I procured, or this is the product that I put into my project, and evaluate it against those guidelines, either the ones that we're going to be working with the PSPC on, or any of the other rating systems that we leave in the system for your evaluation purposes. On the next slide, what you'll see is how that breaks down. So you'll get a nice, beautiful summary of the spend analysis. If we had the quantity unit price, it'll actually tell you how many dollars you spent on each specific SKU in the project. And then underneath that, if you were to roll and scroll through the screen, you'd actually see a breakdown of all that original data for every single product in the project or in the procurement. You'll see all those environmental certifications and certifications, eco labels summarized for you, as if you grabbed them and wanted to create a really nice PDF for your documentation purposes. And that's kind of the final element of making search easy, making analysis easier. But ultimately, what we want to strive to is make it simpler and easier for you to buy correctly with the sustainable criteria you've established as an agency or as a federal government. So that'll be very easy for you to do. You can make unlimited projects with unlimited numbers of products. There's no calling that back. You can do it as a procurement officer. You can also do it as a member of the private sector selling these goods and services in. All that data can be analyzed once the data is in the system. Next slide, please. And then ultimately, as a user, the final thing is it'll keep track of all your projects. Once you have a register account, we can kind of keep your track of your work. And then ultimately, it'll kind of roll up all the energy and water savings, the dollars spent, the number of products that were evaluated. So you can always call them back, take a look at them, make edits as these projects evolve. Sometimes you'll take SKUs out, take SKUs in, and you can always delete a project if you're just playing around with the overview. I think that's my last slide. Yep, so I'll turn it back to Stephanie. Thank you guys so much for your attention, and we look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you so much, merci beaucoup. That was very interesting. I think we're actually a little bit ahead of schedule, which is great. So I'm just going to do a quick recap. So just to summarize, so PSPC received $2.1 million over 3 years to customize and configure for PSPC and for Canada this database. We are starting the second year now. Our goal is to onboard as many Canadian products and certifications as possible. We would love to have you participate with us on this journey. Consider this your call to action. We want to know what certifications you have. We want to know what registries exist that we can onboard. We want to know what's market relevant for you. And we hope that you are with us on this journey for the next 2 years, and hopefully we'll receive ongoing funding because we know that this is valuable and important. As we noted, Joe noted, there's the link to register for category specific consultation. So each of your categories will have an in-depth consultation. There's also a link here that we've put, which is the survey, where you can provide in-depth information regardless of your product category if you're part of another type of organization, and that will not close. So that survey will be open for the full duration of the period. So there's no worry. There's no worry for you not to miss a deadline or whatever. It's open. We look forward to your feedback. We want your input. I think we have about 10 minutes for questions and answers now, which is great. C'est excellent. S'il vous plaît, n'hésitez pas de demander des questions dans votre langue officielle de votre choix. I know Jen's been working on the moderation online. It would be great also if we could maybe take a few questions first from the room, Jen, if that's okay. Yeah.
Yep, sure, we can start there.
Okay, great. So we have a bit of a technological challenge, but I'm going to ask the people in the room if they have any questions, and we'll try and give them the opportunity to pose their questions. Ready?
Yeah, question. So
Mhm.
I don't know, sorry if I missed it, but is there an intent, current status for this database or future development to include thinking of a kind of a review type of product? Think of Amazon when there's thousands of items there that you need to buy, and
Yeah.
often other purchaser in government could have reviewed it and say, okay, this one works
Yeah.
fine with our.
Great question.
So is it something that would be
Thank you.
desirable or possible to include in the?
That's a great question, Sebastian. Thank you. Do you want to just introduce yourself again?
Stephanie?
Yeah.
Before you go ahead and answer that question, would you be able to repeat it so those of us attending
Yeah.
virtually?
Sure.
Thanks.
So Sébastien Fournier from our real property branch was asking if there's an intention for the database to be able to include a review function. So if there's people who use the product in various government departments or in different applications, they'd be able to include a review. And I thought that was a good question. Yeah. Maybe Paul could answer that.
Yeah, we have looked at providing more functionality on the product page at kind of a use level, but the issue lies is how public do you want to make those comments, and then how would we moderate that? So it's always can we add extra data to the system? Sure. It would just have to be functionally accurate through the owner of that site. So every site that we build is usually controlled by a certain group, in this case, your organization. So we had to figure out how you'd want to take those comments and those reviews, and then how would they get publicly put on there, because you could imagine some vendors could go log in to a competitor's product and put in, fake reviews, just like we see on Amazon and other sites too. So I think that's a great question. We'll take that into consideration as we ideate on future versions, and it's certainly something that's doable. We just got to figure out how we would actually integrate that into the system.
Great. Yeah, I could see that for technology, for in a clean tech context. So for the verification and validation. So you're trying the new technology in a new operating environment. How did it perform in that operating environment? Are we able to communicate that? Okay, cool. Any other questions in the room? Yes.
How is the process affected? Is it like a signing offer, or what is?
Okay. So the question from Marco from Gandolfini, pardon me, sorry, Marco. So he's asking how the procurement process is affected if it relates to standing offers and supply arrangements. So I can answer that. So right now, this is unrelated to standing offers and supply arrangements. This is separate. It's a market research tool, which is sort of supplementary. So currently our standing offers and supply arrangements include lots of different types of criteria and requirements. Some of them are really stringent and they're really excellent. Some of them are not as strong. This is being developed sort of in parallel to that process. So as we renew our standing offers and supply arrangements, we'll be able to learn more about what the market can provide. And this will be one of those tools to do that. So hopefully that answers the question. Yeah, okay, great. Okay, any other questions in the room before we turn? Les autres questions? No? Yes? Okay, I think we can turn to the room now.
Perfect.
Or the,
Alors, une question à propos de l'emballage. Here's a question about packaging, one of our favorite topics. And so first I'll direct it to you, Stephanie, and then I'll ask Paul to comment as well. The question is about whether there's been any consideration for the products that are listed on the website and how they're being delivered and what they're packaged in when they're being delivered. And can any work in the area of reducing packaging and single-use plastics be incorporated into the tool?
Yes. So PSPC has policy notification 158, which is a requirement for all PSPC administered procurements to include environmentally preferable language on packaging, which is either reused. It can be either mandatory or optional language, reusable, returnable, or recyclable. This is something that we require as part of our procurements. How we're taking that requirement and applying it to this database is happening. It's something that we're working on in the same way as we're working on the GHG disclosure standards. So applying existing requirements that we have for procurement and applying those to the database. So yes, so we do have that requirement, and we are trying to include that evidence as a data point in the products which we know comply with that requirement. So this is going to be using our electronic procurement solution data and our Darwin data as well, to be able to identify those goods which comply with the PN 158 and environmentally preferable packaging, and then being able to indicate that in the database so that it's a data point that everyone can recognize. So that's something that's work that's underway and is significant and important. So I don't know, Paul, if you can add to that.
Yeah, it's the same thing that we're doing with our federal government, is that I think that we're going to have some unique attributes, as Stephanie mentioned. You know, does it have a single-use plastic disclosure? Is it reusable, recyclable, returnable, whatever those are? And then you guys will all the vendors will have an opportunity to augment their products on the platform and signify which products have which one of those things met as biodegradable, things like that. So yeah, we look forward to helping out with that, because I think it's a very big topic for circularity.
Yeah, Joe wants to make a comment.
I was just going to say to the vendors and suppliers, thanks for the question. That's a really important one. So I just want to encourage you, thinking about certifications and EPDs and filters for your product level, where you can include feedback to us on packaging as well. So we're not just focused on certifications at the product level. And I mentioned actually previously that there are certifications that we've identified already, and those that we've researched that actually ask specific questions about not the product, but the seller, the organization, and it's an organizational focus as well. So everything's on the table, including the package that the product comes with. So if you know of certifications you feel are relevant here in that context, please do offer them to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I would say certifications and technical standards. So we know BNQ has a new recycled content standard as well. We also know an important point is if your product gets onto the database through a third-party certification or a registry, you have the ability to enrich the information that appears. So you can add additional data points. So say, for example, you have an Energy Star certification, you then appear on the database. You'll be able to add additional information regarding your waste management practices, your corporate environmental practices, etc. And those data points can be enriched. It's called enrichment. So that's an important feature of the website as well. Okay.
Great. Do we have time for one more question, or should we wrap things up given the time?
I think, yeah, probably one more.
More? Okay, Laurelian, question à propos de carbone intrinsique. So there's a question about embodied carbon and another related question about construction materials and exactly how we'll be using kind of embodied carbon calculators, carbon footprint calculators in the database and the tool, but also how that might apply to construction projects. So for example, at D&D or PSPC, that are when we're managing construction projects, and how we'll be able to use the tool that way.
Ooh, that's
Yes.
a doozy. Maybe Paul, you go ahead.
Yeah, so we'll have the ability to bring in embodied carbon data. There's a lot of product categories that don't yet have a PCR, so EPDs aren't available for every product category. So we'll take the same approach we have currently. Is we'll have LCA data, we'll have EPD data. If there's embodied carbon data at a unit level, we'll be happy to bring that into the system. How those calculations get done, it gets a little thorny about how do you evaluate one product versus another, or cross-product, kind of collaboration in terms of how do you compare drywall to, say, flooring to furniture. to plumbing fixtures. So we'll bring in the data that's available. And then as far as construction product categories go, we have a wide variety of certifications that drive that data, but any guidance, the industry partners on the call or the ones that want to join later, we welcome having more dialogue on that, because it's an ever evolving world, and every day our data set kind of changes its shape a little bit. So love to know what you guys are thinking, what's applicable, and then we'll take that into consideration as we continue the evolution of the tool.
Can I just add one thing? So we have a federal requirement for embodied carbon in construction materials. So it's also a standard under the policy on green procurement. So right now it applies only to cement. We understand that there's additional construction materials that are coming. It's relative to a regional baseline. So there's an EPD plus a geographic dimension to that standard. It's possible that we will include a range of different EPD, just pull in as many EPDs as we can for construction materials. So these are environmental product declarations. And yeah, I think that's really our gold star, is that's what we want to see the most of, our full environmental product declarations based on a life cycle assessment that corresponds to a product category rule. And that's really what we're hopeful to get as the gold star. Okay, I think we're at time. But yeah, we're at time. Okay. Thank you. Merci beaucoup tout le monde encore. Paul, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joanne. Thank you so much, everyone in the room. Our apologies again for the technical challenges. La prochaine fois, on va avoir plus de capacités techniques, technologiques. And yeah, à la prochaine. Bye.